The Galactic Empire stood as an unshakable colossus, its reach spanning countless star systems, its rule enforced through fear and brutality. On a conquered human colony, the air was thick with tension as a crowd gathered in the shadow of a towering gallows. The Empire's soldiers, clad in sleek, menacing armor, stood in rigid formation, their weapons gleaming under the pale light of the system's twin suns. At the center of the spectacle was a young human boy, no older than 16, his hands bound and his face bruised but defiant. His crime? Aiding the resistance, a fledgling group of rebels who dared to challenge the Empire's iron grip. The boy's name was whispered among the crowd, but to the Empire, he was nothing more than a symbol, a warning to all who might dare to resist. The Empire's commanders watched from a raised platform, their expressions cold and unyielding. To them, humanity was a relic of a bygone era, a species too weak and divided to pose any real threat. They saw the boy as nothing more than an insect to be crushed, a reminder of their own invincibility. As the noose was placed around his neck, one of the commanders stepped forward, his voice amplified by the speakers embedded in his armor. "Let this be a lesson to all who defy the Galactic Empire," he declared, his tone dripping with disdain. "Humanity is weak. Humanity is insignificant. And humanity will fall." The boy, though trembling, raised his head and met the commander's gaze. His voice, though shaky, carried a surprising strength. "You can kill me," he said, his words echoing across the square, "but Earth will remember this. My people will remember this." The crowd stirred, a ripple of unease passing through them. The commander sneered, dismissing the boy's words as the empty bravado of a doomed child. With a wave of his hand, he signaled the executioner. The trapdoor beneath the boy's feet opened, and his body fell, the rope snapping taut. The crowd watched in horrified silence as the boy's life was extinguished, his final act of defiance hanging in the air like a ghost. The Empire's soldiers marched away, their mission accomplished. The boy's body was left to sway in the breeze, a grim reminder of the price of rebellion. But as the crowd dispersed, a single figure remained, hidden in the shadows. He was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, his face obscured by the hood of a worn cloak. His hands clenched into fists, his knuckles white with rage. He had watched the execution from a distance, his heart breaking with every passing second. The boy was his son, his only family, and the Empire had taken him without a second thought. The man's name was unknown to the Empire, but they would soon learn to fear him. He was a sniper, a warrior forged in the fires of Earth's bloodiest conflicts, and he would make the Empire pay for what they had done. As night fell, the man slipped away, disappearing into the labyrinth of alleys and ruins that made up the colony's outskirts. He moved with purpose, his mind already racing with plans and strategies. The Empire had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity. They had underestimated him. And now, they would learn the true cost of their arrogance. The man's journey had only just begun, but his resolve was unshakable. He would hunt them down, one by one, until the galaxy itself trembled at the mention of his name. The Empire had hanged his son, but they had unleashed something far more dangerous. A father's wrath. The man moved like a shadow, his every step calculated, his every breath controlled. He had been a soldier once, a sniper trained to kill with precision and without remorse. Earth's wars had hardened him, but nothing could have prepared him for this, the loss of his son. The boy had been his reason for living, the one light in a life otherwise consumed by darkness. Now, that light was gone, extinguished by the cold, unfeeling hands of the Galactic Empire. The man's grief was a raw, burning thing, but it was eclipsed by something far more dangerous: rage. It coursed through his veins like fire, driving him forward, fueling his every action. He had been living on the colony for years, hiding in plain sight, training the resistance in the art of guerrilla warfare. The Empire had thought the colony pacified, but beneath the surface, a spark of rebellion still burned. The man had nurtured that spark, teaching the rebels how to strike from the shadows, how to hit the Empire where it hurt most. But now, his mission had changed. This was no longer about resistance. This was about vengeance. The Empire had taken his son, and he would make them pay, not just for the boy's life, but for every life they had crushed under their boot. The man's first target was an Empire outpost, a small but strategically important facility on the edge of the colony. It was heavily guarded, but the man knew its weaknesses. He had studied it for months, memorizing every detail, every patrol route, every blind spot. Under the cover of darkness, he slipped past the perimeter, his movements silent and deliberate. The guards never saw him coming. One by one, they fell, their bodies crumpling to the ground as the man's sniper rifle spat death with deadly accuracy. He moved through the outpost like a ghost, his every shot a message to the Empire. You should have feared the boy's father. By the time the sun rose, the outpost was in ruins. The man had destroyed its communication array, its supply depot, and its command center. He left no survivors, but he did leave a message. Scrawled on the wall of the command center, in the blood of the outpost's commander, were the words, "You hanged my son. Now you hang." The man knew the Empire would find it, and he knew they would understand. This was not an act of rebellion. This was a declaration of war. The man's campaign of vengeance had begun, and it would not end until the Empire lay in ruins. He knew the odds were against him. The Empire was vast, its resources seemingly limitless. But the man had something they did not: a purpose. He was not fighting for glory or for power. He was fighting for his son. And that made him unstoppable. As he disappeared into the wilderness, his mind already racing with plans for his next move, he allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. The Empire had thought humanity weak, but they had just awakened a force they could not hope to contain. The man's journey was far from over, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same. The air was thick with smoke and the scent of burning flesh. The once proud Imperial soldiers were nothing more than scattered bodies and shattered morale. They had marched into the city expecting submission. They found something else entirely. A lieutenant attempted to rally his troops, shouting orders in a desperate attempt to restore order. A bullet punched through his temple, his lifeless body crumpling before he finished his command. The others hesitated, their instincts screaming that this wasn't a battle, it was a slaughter. The sniper remained unseen, his rifle an extension of his will. Every shot was deliberate. A soldier ducked behind cover, thinking himself safe. A round ricocheted off a metal beam, curving just enough to tear through his skull. Another tried sprinting for a transport. He made it 2 steps before collapsing, a hole clean through his chest. Reinforcements arrived, armored and well-armed, deploying scanners to locate the attacker. It made no difference. The sniper had spent years preparing for this. Their sensors were useless against the thermal-dampening ghillie suit, against the urban camouflage that made him part of the ruins themselves. The heavy gunners set up, their rotating barrels spinning to life, unleashing a torrent of energy rounds into the buildings around them. They weren't aiming, they were trying to create chaos, to force him into the open. He didn't move. He didn't need to. One precise shot to the power cell of the lead gunner's weapon, and the resulting detonation turned the entire squad into smoldering wreckage. A scout spotted movement. Finally, a glimpse of their ghost. He raised his. The Galactic Empire had ruled through fear. Today, they tasted their own medicine. What was meant to be a simple display of power had turned into a massacre. The sniper's revenge wasn't just personal, it was a message. One that echoed across every remaining human settlement. The Empire was not invincible. They could bleed. They could die. News of the slaughter spread fast. Imperial commanders, once dismissive of human resistance, now spoke in hushed, nervous tones. A single man had dismantled their forces with nothing but a rifle and patience. What would happen if others followed his example? And they did. In the days that followed, sniper attacks surged across occupied territories. Alien patrols moved in smaller, paranoid groups. Recruitment posters were torn down, replaced with crude markings, crosshairs over the Empire's insignia. The sniper had become legend, a faceless ghost who had avenged his son and ignited something the Empire thought it had crushed: defiance. On the Empire's flagship orbiting Earth, a high-ranking official reviewed the battle footage, his fingers tightening around the control panel. What he saw was not an enemy easily defeated. It was something far worse. A predator. One that had learned their weaknesses, exploited their arrogance, and struck with precision no machine could counter. His breath caught when he noticed something on his desk. A single bullet. No one had entered his office. No alarms had been triggered. Yet there it was, resting beside his reports. Engraved on its surface were 2 words in human script. For him. His blood ran cold. The sniper was still out there. And now, he wasn't alone.